What the heck is Ravelry and how can you use it to actually track some of these amazing projects you're working on? It's been a bit since I've done a Ravelry tutorial, so I thought I'd dive in and talk a little bit more about how you can use Ravelry to manage and track your projects. And this is kind of coming up for me lately because I'm actually getting ready to do a review of everything that I've done since I began crocheting 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago in a couple of weeks, actually. It'll be 2 years in a couple of weeks that I actually started to learn how to crochet. But because I'm getting ready to do this review, I'm going through all of my projects that I've done, and I was actually really because I don't know, I'm kind of a digital nerd. I love tracking things. So it really made sense for me that at the very beginning I started to use Ravelry to track my projects. But I didn't use it to its fullest extent from the very beginning. So I want to kind of give you guys some pointers and go over what it's like to track projects in Ravelry, just so that you have that idea, because it makes a lot of sense from the perspective that if you ever want to know, gosh, what yarn did I use for this garment so I know how to wash it? Well, it's tracked in Ravelry. Or if somebody says, do you know what pattern you used for that? It's tracked in Ravelry. Or, you know what, I want to remake that, but I don't know what modifications I made. It can be tracked in Ravelry. So let's talk a little bit about tracking projects in Ravelry. Okay, have I said that enough times now? Good. Let's kind of jump in a little bit and talk about this. If you haven't watched all of the other videos for how to do Ravelry, I'll make sure to link those in the notes below, because I've got an entire playlist on learning to use Ravelry in all of the different ways that Ravelry can be used to help you with your crochet. There's a lot of ways, by the way. Usually tools this powerful come with a cost. And the amazing thing is that for us crocheters and knitters and the people that are using Ravelry to find and track our projects, there is no cost whatsoever. It is an entirely free program. Let's dive over to Ravelry. I'm going to go peek down into this little corner down here so I can see what's going on, and we'll see you over there. Welcome to Ravelry. This is the home page, and when you first go to Ravelry, this is what you're going to see. Every probably few months or so, they update this sort of like newsletter, bloggy kind of cover. So, you'll see that it changes over time, but you're not going to spend a lot of time on this particular page anyway. You're going to dive into all of the juicy details. But when you get here, Ravelry.com is the URL, and I'll link that in below, and I'm not making any commission off this whatsoever. This is just my wanting to give you some great content that is highly useful. So when you get here, this is actually what you will be greeted with because you don't have an account yet. And so you're going to want to put you're going to want to sign up down here. And when you sign up, it will allow you to get to this page. Now, once you're logged in, you can, of course, go over here to the profile and edit your profile and do all the customizations that you want. Most of that is not necessary for tracking your projects. It's completely optional. Do what you're comfortable with, but feel free to explore all of these different settings over here so that you kind of get familiar with the platform a little bit. Let's hop over to what we really want to be talking about, and that is the projects. So if you go under Notebook, you'll see that you have different categories. You've got projects, you've got your queue, you've got your stash, your handspun, tools, favorites, and your library. Just a really quick overview. Projects is what we're going to be talking about today. Queue is where you're going to stash projects that you haven't started yet, but they're like, oh, I really want to start that pretty soon. Your stash is where you log all of the details about your yarn. Hand spun is something I don't explore a lot, but that's where if you're a spinner, you can store all your stuff there. Tools, to be honest with you, I've never actually looked at tools. So you have your charts, your tiny needles. Interesting. So I've never quite looked at these at all, but yeah, they're there. Interesting. And then you also have favorites. So as you're browsing patterns, you can give a pattern a heart and then it will show up in your favorites. That way you can find it later. And library over here is where all of the patterns that you have purchased through Ravelry or uploaded to Ravelry or anything like that, you can store all of your your patterns in the library. Okay, so that's our quick overview. Now we're going to hop back over to the projects, and you can see that I have 79 projects in here. Now this includes everything from my current whips all the way down to projects that I've finished and ones that I have frogged. It even tells me if I'm hibernating, like this one would be hibernating, and all of the in between. So I can scroll through here and see everything that I've made that I've actually put in here, which is, I would say, probably 95% of projects I've actually put in here. Now, there's a few ways that you can add a new project. The quickest way is just to click here, but I'm going to suggest that you do it a little bit different. And the reason is because you want to, as much as possible, associate it with an existing project, an existing pattern, if there is one. So let me kind of just quickly go through this, and then I'll flip over to the way that I like to do it. If you click on that Add Project button, you can select the craft, you can name your project, you can add the name of the pattern or say whether or not you used it. So let's say this is the Tide and True. And then if you happen to know the associated project name here, sometimes it'll come up like this and you can say, oh, okay, there it is. That's the one that I want. Choose the pattern, and then that gets you to where you need to be. Now, that's if you actually know the name of the pattern. Let's say I was in here and I was doing my search, and I have another tutorial on how to search for patterns. And I happened to find this vintage lace top that I think is absolutely adorable, and I want to make this one. So instead of having to know that it's vintage lace top and then go search for it, I can say, oh, I want to create this project. Right here is the button that you would use for that. So this sort of circumvents some of that having to search for it, because you're already in the project and you're already in that pattern, and you can just come in here, change the name of it if you want to, and then create the project, and you are right to that same sort of area. Now, you could stop here, but I don't suggest it. There is so much more that you can do with your pattern tracking on this particular system. So you can see here it gives you the very bare bones information. But if you go in here to edit project, this is where it gets fun, and I don't know, I'm kind of nerding out on all of these things. You can track so much information, it will just boggle your mind. Now, how much you choose to track is totally up to you. I'm that kind of person that if I don't track everything I possibly can, I go back and I'm like, oh, but what did I do with that? Wait, what yarn did I use? All of that good stuff. So let's go through. Okay, we're going to go first to this add photos. This is not exactly laid out ideally, but I want to go left to right just so that you're looking at the screen and able to kind of follow along a little bit. The add photos, at the very beginning, obviously you don't have any project photos, but you can add a photo of the yarn that you're going to use, maybe the hook size that you're using or the exact hook that you're using. So just take a quick picture And this actually allows you to upload in a variety of different ways. So if you have that photo on your computer or Google Drive or whatever the case may be. Now, the trick that I use, because I'm taking pictures on my phone and it doesn't actually have an app, but you can still go to the website. And so I tend to upload the photos directly from my phone to the website on my phone. Even though it's not an app, sometimes you gotta have to zoom up and down and do all that kind of good stuff, but it works. It's easier than moving the photo to my phone and then uploading it. So that's one of those steps to add whatever yarn you're using and the beginning photos. Now, as you progress, you can take progress photos, or at the very least, you can take your finished object photos and add those there. Now, this is where you can change the name, you can add a name, you can do whatever. You can say who you want this made for. You can, if it's for some reason made for somebody else, or you just want to kind of tag somebody that's also on Ravelry, you can do that. If you have a date, like the baby is due on July 1st, you can say, I need to have this finished by May 30th, or whatever you want to choose. You can say what size. Here's where it's associated with a specific pattern. If maybe you're using two different patterns for the same thing and you're combining them, or you're doing a gift and you want to do that together, you could certainly add additional patterns. You can say what category. If sometimes when it comes up with the pattern, it will already give you a category. Sometimes it doesn't. So if you want to, you can certainly choose that. And it's kind of fun as I'm going through and looking at all my old projects right now to see how many amigurumi I've made, how many blankets I've made, which is 0, how many tops I've made, all of those kind of good things. So that's kind of fun. You can create your own tags if you're that kind of person that's like, I always want to know this about my patterns. You can absolutely do that. Here's where you can add hook sizes. And this is really, really important if you have a tendency to hibernate projects, which just means to kind of put them away for a while and you come back to them, or maybe you have multiple projects that you work on. And so your hook doesn't necessarily stay with the project, but then you're like, which hook did I use? What size did I use? And I usually put down in the notes which specific hook did I use, because Clover, a Moore hook is going to work very different than a tulip hook. So even though they might be the same size, they might have a different sort of tension to them. So I like to note the exact hook that I used, not just the hook size. Then if you want to know what the pattern gauge is, what your gauge was, how it compares, you can track all of that. The yarns, now I'm a big fan of using the stashed yarn in Ravelry. So if my yarn is not already in the stash, I will start by putting the yarn in the stash so that I can actually use the stashed yarn that I have and associate it that way. Again, I'm a data nerd. I love the details. So I want as much information logged as possible. If you don't care so much about that, you can just go in here and add the yarn. You can add the colorway, the dye lot if you want to, what weight yarn it is, how much yarn per skein. Then once you're done, you can say what the total yarn you actually used was, all of that good information. All right? Okay. Then down here we have the project notes. Now project notes are going to be public to other people. So when you finish this project, or at any point in time, somebody that comes along and looks at the vintage lace top patterns, they're going to be able to see your project notes. But Ravelry also allows you to add private notes. So if you don't want to share something with the public, you certainly can do that via private notes. I like to use the project notes to notate where I've left off. So I can say I'm on row 6 or row 52 or whatever. You can say where you left off. That can be changed as you go. You can also say if you've made a modification, you can say what your gauge is. I like to give more detail because I like it when other people give me detail. So if I go into a project and I look at all of those, if I go into a pattern and I look at all of the projects that have been completed, I can see that, all of these people have made a size large, but they had to modify rows 6 through 12 to get it to fit better. I like to know that kind of information, so I like to put that information in my project notes. Anything that you can update there is going to be beneficial to other people. All right, now let's go over here to the third column. This is where we add our status. So if it's in progress, you can change it to finished, hibernating, or frogged. You can add your happiness meter once you're done with it. And for me, I use this happiness meter based on not was I happy with the pattern, but was I happy with the results of my project. Other people might use it different. They might say whether or not they're happy with the pattern, but I do it this way because you can also rate the pattern down here. So I use this rating system down here to determine my happiness meter of the pattern, and I use this one to say the happiness of how happy am I with the actual project. Here you can say what your progress is if you want to kind of keep that. I don't use the project progress meter all that much. Obviously once I'm finished it, I update it to 100%. But if you're working on a longer term project, you certainly might want to do that. I do like the idea of using a started and a completed date because that gives me a good idea of how long a project takes. So if I've done 5 blankets and I see that most of them take me about 4 weeks, then I know that a blanket's going to take me approximately 4 weeks. And if I have to make one by a certain deadline, that gives me that sense that that's about how long I need to do it. Now, if you are in any groups, they will be listed here, and you certainly can share your project in those groups. I generally don't do that too often, but it is absolutely up to you if you want to. Then once you've updated all those details, you just go in here and you save the changes, and at any point in time, you can go in and edit the project to add new photos, to update your notes, or you can just update your notes right here. Now let's go take a look at one of my projects so that you can actually see what something like this might look like. All right, so here is the Jasper Easy Mesh Summer Crochet Top, and this is a great pattern to do for this coming season as we get into more cool weather, warm weather, not cool weather, warm weather. This is a great top. It's fun, it's quick, it's easy. I had a lot of fun making it, and I sort of experimented with the coloring because I didn't have enough of either the brown or the coral to work up an entire project. So I did different rows, and you can see when I began, I just took a photo of the color, the yarns that I was using. Then I took a progress photo. I don't generally tend to do a lot of progress photos. I should do more of them, but just not something that I tend to do. And then I took my final project photos. You can see this project I started on September 3rd of last year. I finished September 18th, and I was really happy with it, 5 out of 5. You can see that I gave the pattern ratings, and I'm not sure, I don't remember. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to give like a review. I wish that it let you give a review because then I could say why I only gave it 4 stars here. I don't remember for sure. It might have been that it was a little bit more finicky for me. I have no idea, but I'm not going to go back and change it now. So overall, it was an easy pattern, but clarity and overall rating, I gave it 4 stars. So then over here, you can see how much yarn I used in the 2 different colors and my notes. So I started with a chain 89. For whatever reason, I thought there would be more rows for the shoulder, so I stopped adding rows, and that might have been the clarity issue, is that I wasn't clear on how many rows it was or how long it was. There were no images of drawings, graphs, whatever the word is right now, of what the measurements should be for this pattern. So that might have been the disconnect and why I gave it a slightly lower overall. And so it gives me these notes. So if I choose to do that again in the future, or if somebody else is coming along and they say, hey, I want to do this pattern too, they can read my notes and see what it is that I had to say about it. So then over here, it actually gives you the opportunity to rate the yarn as well, which is kind of a fun feature and gives you some of those options. Now, if we scroll back up to the top, you can see that I actually have two comments on here, one from the pattern designer and one me replying to the pattern designer. So that's where you can kind of see that. And you can see that one person actually favorited this particular project, not just pattern, but my project. So she was probably looking at this pattern and liked the fact that I used the two colors or something like that, and liked that kind of detail in it. So she favorited it. So that's what it looks like. That's how you track those things. Now, let's go back to my projects board. And when we're on here, and you can see that I've created this, it's kind of sitting there, but I don't want it anymore. How you get rid of a project is you can go to these three dots. You can edit it, you can add photos, you can add comments, or you can just delete the project. Since I'm not actually working on that, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then we can look at a couple of different fun features. One is the index. And this is what I've been looking at as I'm sort of going through and reviewing my year, my 2 years, and seeing what I've made, who I've made it for. You can see all my tags, which I don't use a lot. You can see what age ranges those projects were for. You can see what sort of categories those were for. You can see how many I finished, what I frogged, what's currently hibernating, how many projects I have in progress, what years they were completed, who I made them for, and then you can see even which ones were viewed the most by other people. So as somebody goes and they look at the spring mesh sweater, they see my project, they might click in to see what notes I made about it and see more detail. So that's just kind of a fun little feature if you like to see what other people are see what other people are looking at. And then you can organize it from here too. And again, I don't use this feature all that much, but if you like to use the tags, you can set those there. You can do some different features over here, but this is mostly for your tagging, and I don't use the tags that much. So it's there if you want it. Now, the fun thing is, if you like challenges, you can set a challenge for yourself. So you can say, how many projects do I want to finish in 2025? And I can say, you know what? Let's set a goal of, I probably do about 3 projects a month. Times 12 would be 36. What if we set a goal of 40 projects? Then we can say, oh, I'm 8 projects into that. This is how close I am. And these are the projects that I've made. That's kind of a fun little way if you like those goals and challenges and that kind of thing. So an interesting option if that works for you. Now, if you do a lot of bigger projects, you might want to make a much smaller goal. So for sure. Now, while we're here, let's just talk a little bit about the queue. I don't use the queue a lot, but I think it really is a great benefit to work along with your projects. And that way you can kind of see what's coming up and plan for those things. The queue, when you're looking at patterns, we're going to flip over here. We'll just do a quick search. And let's say that I love this thick chicken pot holder. And I know that I have projects that I'm working on right now, so I don't want to do this one yet, but I can add it to my queue. And I can say, this is the yarn that I want to use. Here's some tags. Here's who I'm going to make it for. And just save some of those things. Then you can even adjust the position so that when you go in here, you can say, ooh, you know what? I think I want to move this up to be the next project I work on instead of the scrap yarn. And or I can say I don't have any, no, I have no desire anymore to do the scrubby star. I'm just going to get rid of that one. And it says, yep, now we're good to go. Then when I'm like, what projects do I want to work on next? I can come over here and I can look at those projects. If I added what kind of yarn, I could say, okay, I've got that. Or I could say, I'm not sure. And so I need to go either shopping in my stash or I need to actually start looking online for sales, which is another great way to use that queue, is to look for sales when they're coming up. So those things are all really beneficial to add to your project. Your projects over here. They kind of work hand in hand, which is why I wanted to share them with you. So what tips do you have? How do you manage your projects? I know a lot of people just use books because they're more paper pencil oriented, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just prefer digital because I change things all the time, and I want to cross-reference information. So I don't want to have to look through a book and say, okay, let me count how many projects I've done. Being able to have it digitally, I can just look and say, let me hop over here. I have 80 projects. Wait, I only want to look at the ones that I have finished. Then I can say, look for all of those different sort of categories. I can do an advanced search and say, let me look at finished. Okay, I have 74 finished. If I do multiple things, I could say, what did I crochet? Oh, look, this is interesting. So I've got 19 projects that are Aran weight and 7 that are worsted, which I never would have suspected. I would have suspected fingering and sport weight, and maybe DK would have been the ones that I have more of, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So it's all really, for me, I love to be able to look at these different features. So what do you think? Are you going to start using Ravelry for your project tracking? Do you have another system that you love even more? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Let's talk about those things, because other people that might be stumbling across this particular video are going to want to know those things. And because my anniversary of crocheting is coming up, I have a goal, and not just my anniversary of crocheting, but 1 month later is my 1-year anniversary for this YouTube channel. And my goal for this YouTube channel is to reach 300 subscribers by May 4th. So may the 4th be with you, and help me. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Do all those good things. Farah, take us out.